Okay, so today we're taking a deep dive into some pretty interesting data on the global asthma treatment market.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area.
We've got this recent report, and I gotta say, some of the findings are really eye-opening.
I agree. It paints a pretty dynamic picture of, well, where things are heading.
Exactly, and that's really our goal here, right? To kind of sift through all the details and give our listeners a clear understanding.
Absolutely. To distill it down to, like, the key takeaways, the stuff that really matters.
Yeah, no one wants to wade through pages and pages of data.
Not unless they really have to.
Exactly, so we're doing the heavy lifting, so to speak.
Yeah, think of it as a shortcut to the insights.
Exactly. And I think one of the biggest takeaways right off the bat is the sheer size of this market.
Mhm.
We're talking the report projects it'll hit 30.4 billion US dollars in 2025.
Yeah, that's a big number.
Huge, and it doesn't stop there. By 2033, they're projecting it to reach 47.0094 billion with a KGR, a compound annual growth rate of 5.60%.
That's some serious growth,
Mhm.
and I think it really underscores just how significant this area of healthcare is becoming.
It does. It's clearly a market that's on the move. And to really understand it, the report takes a pretty comprehensive look. It goes back, uses historical data from 2021 to 2024, estimates for the current year, 2025, and then projects all the way out to 2033.
Yeah, you really get that long-term perspective.
You do. So we're talking over a decade of data. It's a pretty comprehensive picture.
It is. And
Yeah.
to, kind of break it down a bit, we're going to start with that overall global market size, the growth we just talked about, but then we'll dig into the regional variations because it's not the same story everywhere.
Right, right. Very different dynamics in different parts of the world.
Exactly. And then we'll look at how different types of asthma treatments are performing, like what's growing, what's not, and then, of course, how they're administered, different ways of getting those medications to patients.
Yeah, because that plays a big role too.
Absolutely. And then finally, we'll touch on those distribution channels, how those medications are actually getting out there to the people who need them.
Okay, so let's dive in, shall we? Starting with that global overview.
Okay, so those headline numbers, 30.4 billion in 2025, growing to 47.0094 billion by 2033, with that 5.60% CAGR. That's pretty remarkable growth.
It is, but the question is what's driving it?
Well, the report links it pretty directly to, the rising prevalence of asthma globally.
So more people being diagnosed, more people living with asthma.
Exactly. And unfortunately, yeah, that number seems to be going up.
It makes sense though, right? I mean, if you have a larger population of people with asthma, you're naturally going to have a larger market for treatments.
It's basic supply and demand, right?
Right. But now let's get into the regional breakdown because this is where it gets really interesting. The global picture isn't uniform at all.
Not at all. There are some pretty significant differences in how the market is playing out in different regions.
Both in terms of like the current market share they hold and how fast they're projected to grow.
Exactly. And I think understanding these regional variations is key to really grasping what's happening globally.
So let's start with North America. Where do things stand there?
So right now, North America, they're the leaders. They hold the biggest piece of the pie, over 37% of the global market.
Wow, that's a pretty dominant position.
It is. And their market size in 2025 is estimated to be 11.248 billion US dollars. Now, they are still growing, but the pace is a bit more measured. It's projected to be about a 4.1% CAGR, reaching 15.5131 billion by 2033.
Okay, so solid growth, but not explosive or anything.
Right. And within North America, it's really the U.S. is driving things. They have a 2025 market size of 8.87467 billion and a KGR of 3.9%.
Okay, so slightly lower than the overall North American KGR.
Yeah, but still a major player.
Absolutely. Now, what about Canada and Mexico? They're part of that picture too, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Canada's at 1.34976 billion with a 4.9% KGR. And Mexico, they're at 1.02357 billion with a 4.6% KGR.
Okay, so they're both contributing, but the U.S. is really the big dog in North America.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so North America, the current leader, but steady growth. What about Europe? What's happening over there?
Europe's another big player. They account for over 29% of the global revenue. And their market size in 2025, it's estimated to be about 8.816 billion US dollars. They're projected to grow at a a decent clip, 4.7% CAGR, reaching 12.6925 billion by 2033.
Okay, so similar to North America in terms of market share, but maybe a little bit faster growth.
Yeah, a little bit. But what's really interesting about Europe is that there's a lot of variation within the region itself.
Mhm.
Like, for example, the UK is showing some pretty strong growth, 5.5% CAGR. Their market size in 2025 is 1.48109 billion.
Hmm.
But then you look at Germany, their market size in 2025 is bigger, 1.7457 billion, but their CAGR is projected to be a bit lower, 4.9%.
So even within a region, you see these different dynamics playing out.
Absolutely. And that probably reflects a whole bunch of things like, you know, differences in healthcare systems, how quickly they adopt new treatments, the prevalence of asthma in each country.
It's like a microcosm of the global picture in a way.
Exactly. It's pretty
Wow.
fascinating.
Okay, so let's move on to a region we often hear about as having huge growth potential across a lot of sectors. Asia Pacific, APAC.
Yeah, APAC is really where the action is in terms of growth. Right now, they hold about 24% of the global market share. Their market size in 2025 is 7.296 billion US dollars. But get this, they're projected to grow at an 8.3% CAGR, hitting 13.973 billion by 2033.
Wow, that's a big jump.
It's huge, and it's really being driven by countries like India. They have a projected CAGR of 10.2%. That's massive. In China, they have a really big market already in 2025, 3.06432 billion, and they're still projected to grow at a very healthy 7.8%.
So it sounds like there's a lot of unmet need in APAC, a lot of room for expansion in that market.
Definitely. And, it makes you wonder what's driving that. Are more people being diagnosed with asthma? Is it that treatments are becoming more accessible? It's probably a combination of factors.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's pretty complex.
For sure.
Okay, so APAC, definitely the region to watch. What about South America? How do they fit in?
South America's got a more moderate share of the global market, just over 4%. Their market size in 2025 is 1.1552 billion, but they are projected to grow at a decent rate, 6.3% CAGR, reaching 1.8804 billion by 2033. And the biggest market within South America is Brazil. They have a 2025 market size of 494.43 million US dollars and a CAGR of 6.9%.
Okay, so steady growth in South America, although not as dramatic as what we're seeing in APAC.
Right, definitely a different story in those two regions.
Now, what about the Middle East?
So the Middle East, they have a market share of around 4%, similar to South America. Their 2025 market size is projected to be 1.216 billion US dollars, and they have a projected CAGR of 6.9%, reaching 2.0684 billion by 2033. And within the Middle East, the key players are Saudi Arabia, with a 2025 market size of 428.03 million and a 7.2% CAGR, and the UAE, they're at 250.50 million with a 7.4% CAGR.
Okay, so again, steady growth there.
Yeah, similar to South America in terms of market share, but their projected growth rate is a tad higher.
And last but not least, Africa.
So Africa currently has the smallest market share globally, only about 2.20%. Their projected market size in 2025 is 668.8 million US dollars. But they are expected to grow at a rate of 5.9%, reaching 1.0577 billion by 2033. And the main markets within Africa are South Africa, with a 2025 market size of 235.42 million and a 6.8% CAGR, and Nigeria, they're at 53.50 million with a 6.9% CAGR.
Okay, so smallest market share right now, but still some decent growth projected.
Yeah, and it suggests that there's a growing need for asthma treatments across the continent.
Right, makes sense. So we've got North America and Europe as the current powerhouses in terms of market share, but APAC is really poised for some major growth in the coming years.
Exactly, and South America, the Middle East, Africa, they're all showing solid growth too.
Yeah. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the different types of treatments that are used for asthma. The report breaks it down into two main categories: long-term control medications and quick relief medications, sometimes called rescue medication.
Right, those are the two main approaches to managing asthma with medication.
And they each serve a very different purpose.
Absolutely. So long-term control medications, those are the ones that you take regularly, like every day, to try to prevent symptoms from even happening in the first place.
Right. So it's about managing the condition, keeping it under control.
Exactly. It's about preventing those asthma attacks from even occurring.
And then you've got the quick relief medications, the rescue inhalers.
Right. Those are the ones you use when you're actually having an asthma attack or if you're experiencing symptoms and you need quick relief.
So it's like for those acute situations.
Exactly. It's like, okay, we need to open up those airways right now.
And the report suggests that right now, the long-term control medications are holding the largest share of the market.
Yeah. Which makes sense because, the focus is really on preventing those attacks from happening in the first place.
Right. It's about proactive management.
Exactly. And, there's been a lot of progress in that area, like those combination inhalers.
The ones that have both an inhaled corticosteroid to reduce inflammation and a long-acting beta agonist to open up the airways.
Exactly. And those are becoming increasingly popular.
And then there are also those biologic therapies, right, for people with more severe asthma.
Yeah, those are pretty cutting edge. They're injectable medications, often monoclonal antibodies that target very specific proteins in the body that are causing that inflammation.
So it's like a more targeted approach.
Much more targeted. It's like instead of using a sledgehammer, you're using a scalpel.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, it's like, let's be really precise about what we're targeting here.
Okay, so long-term control is the big player right now. But the report also said that quick relief medications are actually the fastest growing segment of the market.
Yeah, which is interesting, right? You'd think that with all the focus on long-term control, the need for rescue meds would be going down.
Yeah, it seems a bit counterintuitive.
It does, but there are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, even though we're getting better at managing asthma, attacks still happen, and they might even be on the rise because of things like air pollution, allergies, changes in lifestyle.
Yeah, those things can definitely trigger attacks.
Absolutely. So there's still a need for those rescue medications.
Right, because sometimes, no matter how good your long-term control is, you still need that immediate relief.
Exactly. And the second reason is that there have been some pretty cool developments in rescue medications, like those dual-action inhalers that combine both a rescue medication and a maintenance medication.
Oh yeah, I've heard about those.
And then there were those smart inhalers, which are pretty amazing.
Yeah, what are those exactly?
So they're inhalers with sensors that can track how often you use them, and some of them can even detect things like changes in your breathing patterns.
Wow, so it's like they're collecting data to help you manage your asthma.
Exactly. And that data can be shared with your doctor so they can adjust your treatment plan if needed.
That's pretty cool. It's like having a little mini asthma clinic in your pocket.
Yeah, and it's all part of this trend towards more personalized medicine, using technology to tailor treatments to each individual patient.
Okay, so long-term control is still the main focus, but quick relief medications are evolving, becoming more sophisticated.
Definitely. There's a lot of innovation happening in that space.
Now, let's talk about how these medications actually get into the body, the different routes of administration.
Okay, so the main routes are inhaled, oral, intravenous, and subcutaneous.
Inhaled being the most common one, I'd imagine.
Yeah, definitely. Inhaled medications, those are the mainstay of asthma treatment. They deliver the medication directly to the lungs where it needs to go, and they have a pretty fast onset of action.
Right, and you don't have to worry about it being absorbed into your whole system.
Exactly. So you get fewer side effects.
And most of the common asthma medications are inhaled, right? Like your inhaled corticosteroids, your bronchodilators, those combination inhalers we talked about.
Yep. All of those fall under the inhaled category.
Now, the report also mentioned a rapid growth rate in the subcutaneous segment.
Yeah, that's a newer development, and it's really being driven by those biologic therapies we talked about earlier.
Ah, the ones for severe asthma.
Exactly. So these are injectable medications that are administered under the skin.
And they work by targeting specific inflammatory pathways that are involved in severe asthma.
Right. So it's a very precise approach to treatment.
And it sounds like the availability of these biologics is increasing.
It is. There are more and more of them being approved, and they're becoming a more common option for people with severe asthma.
Okay, so inhaled medications are still the workhorse of asthma treatment, but subcutaneous biologics are becoming increasingly important for a specific group of patients.
Yeah, it's like we're expanding our toolkit, giving doctors more options to help their patients.
And speaking of getting those treatments to patients, let's talk about distribution channels. How are these medications actually getting into the hands of the people who need them?
Right. So the report identifies three main channels: Retail pharmacies, hospital pharmacies, and online pharmacies.
And I'm guessing retail pharmacies are the big ones just because they're so accessible?
Yeah, definitely. They're the most common place for people to get their asthma medications, both the long-term control meds and the rescue inhalers.
It's just convenient, right? You can pick up your prescriptions while you're doing your other shopping.
Exactly. They're everywhere. They're easy to get to.
But the report also mentioned a pretty rapid growth rate in the online pharmacy segment.
Yeah, that's part of a bigger trend we're seeing in healthcare. Everything's moving online.
Telemedicine, digital health solutions, it's changing the way healthcare is delivered.
Absolutely. And online pharmacies are a big part of that.
What are some of the factors that are driving the growth of online pharmacies for asthma medication specifically?
Well, I think convenience is a big one. People like being able to order their medications from home and have them delivered to their doorstep.
Yeah, especially if you're, busy or you have mobility issues.
Exactly. And online pharmacies often offer competitive pricing and discounts.
That can be a big draw, especially for people who are paying for their medications out of pocket.
And then there's the fact that it's becoming easier to get digital prescriptions.
So you don't even have to go to the doctor's office to get your refills.
Right, you can do it all online.
Okay, so retail pharmacies are still the dominant channel, but online pharmacies are gaining ground quickly.
Yeah, it's definitely a trend to watch.
Now, we've talked about the market size, the growth, the regional differences, the types of treatments, how they're administered, and how they're distributed. But what's really driving all of these trends? What are the underlying factors?
Well, the report talks about a few key market drivers.
Okay, let's hear them.
So first of all, like we discussed earlier, there's the rising prevalence of asthma.
More people getting diagnosed, more people needing treatment.
Exactly. And that's being driven by a whole bunch of things like air pollution, allergies, changes in lifestyle.
It's a complex interplay of factors.
It is, and it's something that we need to pay attention to.
Absolutely. So rising prevalence, that's one driver. What else?
The second driver is the growing adoption of those biologic therapies for severe asthma.
The targeted treatments we talked about earlier.
Exactly. So as those become more available and more widely used, that's going to drive market growth.
Makes sense. It's a new innovative treatment option that's filling a need.
And then the third driver is the advancements in technology, like those smart inhalers and digital monitoring systems.
So it's about improving adherence to treatment, helping people manage their asthma more effectively.
Right. And those technologies they're getting better all the time.
So it's a combination of a growing patient population, new treatments, and better technology.
Exactly. Those are the three main forces driving the market.
Now, on the flip side, are there any factors that might be holding the market back? The report mentions some market restraints.
Yeah, there are a couple of things that could slow down growth.
What are they?
So one is the high cost of those biologic treatments.
They can be pretty expensive, right?
Yeah, they are. And that can make them inaccessible for some people, especially those who don't have good insurance coverage or who live in lower income countries.
Right. So cost is a barrier for some.
Definitely. And then the other restraint is the potential for side effects from long-term use of corticosteroids.
Oh, right. Those are a common treatment for asthma, but they can have some downsides.
Yeah, they can. And that can make some people hesitant to take them.
So it's a balance, right? Weighing the benefits against the risks.
Always. That's part of the decision-making process in medicine.
Okay, so those are some of the challenges. Now, looking ahead, what are some of the trends that we should be paying attention to in the asthma treatment market? What's coming down the pike?
Well, the report highlights a couple of really interesting trends.
I'm all ears.
So the first one is the increasing focus on personalized medicine and the use of artificial intelligence, or AI, in asthma management.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice?
So it could involve using data from things like wearable sensors, electronic health records, even genetic testing to create more tailored treatment plans for each individual patient.
So it's about moving away from that one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that each person's asthma is unique, and their treatment should be tailored to their specific needs.
I like that. It's a very patient-centric approach.
It is, and AI can also play a big role in things like predicting exacerbations, those flare-ups of symptoms.
So it's like using data to anticipate problems before they even happen.
Exactly, and that can help people take steps to prevent those flare-ups, or at least manage them more effectively.
That's pretty amazing.
It is, and then the other trend that the report mentions is the growing popularity of those combination inhalers.
The ones that have both the long-term control and the quick relief medications in one device.
Yep, those are becoming increasingly popular because they're just so convenient.
Yeah, it's It's one less thing to have to worry about.
Exactly. And it can improve adherence to treatment because people are more likely to take their medication if it's easy and convenient.
So the future of asthma treatment is looking more personalized, more data-driven, and more user-friendly.
I think that's a pretty good summary.
Okay, now one last thing before we wrap up. The report briefly mentioned the competitive landscape in the asthma treatment market. What's the overall picture there?
So the market is described as highly competitive with a lot of different players, both big global pharmaceutical companies and smaller, more regional companies.
So it's a pretty crowded space.
It is, and everyone's vying for a piece of the pie.
And the report gave some examples of recent activities in the market, right? New product launches, things like that.
Those are pretty interesting ones, actually.
What were some of the highlights?
So, for example, AstraZeneca, they got approval in the U.S. in January 2024 for a new rescue medication called Airsupra. And what's cool about this medication is that it also has an anti-inflammatory component.
So it's tackling two problems at once.
Exactly. It's a dual-action approach.
And then there was Teva, right? They had some news about their smart inhaler.
Yeah, they presented some data in February 2023 on their DigiHaler system, which is a smart inhaler that's designed to help both patients and doctors manage asthma more effectively.
Using data, I'm guessing.
Yep, it collects data on things like medication usage and inhalation technique, and that data can be shared with the doctor.
So it's all about using technology to improve treatment.
Exactly, and then in September 2024, Sanofi and Regeneron, they launched a new dosage strength of their biologic therapy Dupixent.
Oh, the one we talked about earlier.
Yeah, and the idea behind that is to make it more accessible to a wider range of patients.
So it's like they're trying to bring down the cost barrier.
Exactly, they're trying to make it more affordable for people.
Okay, so those are just a few examples of the kind of innovation that's happening in the asthma treatment market.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, a lot of new developments.
So to wrap up, for our listeners who've been following along, what would you say are the key takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that the global asthma treatment market is expected to grow significantly over the next decade.
From $30.4 billion in 2025 to over $47 billion by 2033.
Exactly. And that growth is being driven by a number of factors, including the rising prevalence of asthma, the development of new treatments, and advancements in technology.
And we also saw that there are some pretty significant regional variations in the market.
Yeah, APAC is definitely the region to watch. They're projected to see the most rapid growth.
And in terms of treatment approaches, long-term control medications are still the most common, but quick relief medications are the fastest growing segment.
And inhaled medications are still the main way that asthma medications are delivered. But those subcutaneous biologic therapies are becoming more important for people with severe asthma.
And then finally, we talked about how retail pharmacies are still the dominant distribution channel, but online pharmacies are gaining ground quickly.
It's a dynamic and evolving market, that's for sure.
It is. It's a market that's responding to a major global health challenge with constant innovation in treatments, delivery methods, and accessibility.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
So on that note, here's a final thought for our listeners to ponder. Given everything we've discussed, what do you think the biggest challenges and opportunities will be in asthma treatment over the next decade, both for the people living with asthma and for the healthcare professionals who are treating them?
It's something to really think about, especially with all these advancements and changes happening so rapidly.
It is, and it's a conversation that we need to keep having.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
Sounds good.